I was sitting at my desk on a regular Thursday afternoon reviewing blueprints for a residential project in southeast Portland when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost sent it to voicemail, but something made me pick up. The voice on the other end froze me in place. It was Madison, a name I had not heard in 2.5 years, a chapter I thought I had permanently closed. Her tone was urgent, almost desperate. She said we needed to talk, that it could not wait. My stomach dropped. I had no idea that answering that call would drag me into the most absurd situation of my entire life. Before I dive into what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments below. If you have ever had someone from your past resurface with a crazy request, hit that like button and subscribe, because this story gets wild. Let me take you back to how Madison and I met and why I disappeared from her life 2.5 years ago. 3 years ago, back in the summer of 2022, I met Madison at an art gallery opening in downtown Portland. I had gone with a colleague who was into local art, and honestly, I was just there for the free wine and cheese. But then I saw her standing in front of a massive abstract painting, tilting her head like she was trying to decode some hidden message. She had auburn hair that caught the light, wore a vintage floral dress, and radiated this effortless confidence. I walked over, made some joke about the painting looking like a toddler's masterpiece, and she laughed. That laugh hooked me. We started talking, and the conversation flowed like we had known each other for years. She worked in marketing for a small, eco-friendly brand, loved hiking, and had strong opinions about mid-century modern architecture, which, as an architect, I found incredibly attractive. We exchanged numbers, and within a week we were inseparable. Madison was smart, funny, and seemed to have her life together. We would spend weekends hiking the trails at Columbia River Gorge, cooking elaborate dinners at my apartment, and binge-watching old noir films. For the first 6 months, everything felt right. I thought I had found someone I could actually build a future with. But then subtle cracks started to appear. It began with small things. Madison would check my phone when I was in the shower, scrolling through my messages like it was her right. When I asked her about it, she would get defensive, saying she had been cheated on before and just needed reassurance. I felt bad for her, so I tried to be understanding. I gave her my passcodes, thinking transparency would ease her anxiety. It did not. Instead, it opened the floodgates. If I mentioned a woman's name during a work story, Madison would grill me for details. What did she look like? How old was she? Did I think she was attractive? She would show up at my office unannounced, claiming she was just in the neighborhood even though my office was 20 minutes out of her way. She wanted to be added to my bank account, suggesting we merge finances even though we were not even engaged. When I hesitated, she accused me of not being serious about our relationship. I started feeling trapped. My friends noticed I was withdrawing. Kyle, my best friend and fellow architect, pulled me aside one night after work and said I looked like I was drowning. I brushed it off, telling him Madison just had trust issues and I could handle it. But deep down I knew something was wrong. I felt like I was constantly walking on eggshells, monitoring my every word and action to avoid triggering another accusation or meltdown. The breaking point came on a cold October night. I had fallen asleep early after a long day on a construction site. I woke up around 2 in the morning and noticed the glow of my laptop screen from across the room. Madison was sitting on my couch, scrolling through my emails. Not just recent ones, but going back months, reading correspondence with clients, friends, everyone. I sat up, my heart pounding, and asked her what she was doing. She did not even flinch. She said she needed to make sure I was not hiding anything from her. I lost it. I told her this was a violation, that she had no right to go through my personal messages. She turned it around on me, screaming that if I had nothing to hide, I would not care. She said I was being secretive, that I must be cheating if I was this defensive. The argument spiraled for hours. By sunrise, she gave me an ultimatum. Either I gave her complete access to every part of my life, or we were done. I chose done, but breaking up with Madison was not as simple as saying the words. She refused to accept it. She called me 50 times a day, showed up at my apartment building, sat in her car outside for hours. She left long, rambling voicemails about how much she loved me, how I was throwing away something special, how she would change. When I blocked her number, she borrowed phones from friends to keep calling. She emailed me essays about our relationship, analyzing every moment, begging for another chance. I tried to be kind at first. I met her for coffee, explained calmly that we were not compatible, that we both deserved healthier relationships. She nodded, seemed to understand, and then the next day the calls started again. After 2 weeks of this nightmare, I realized there was no gentle way out. Madison was not going to let go unless I forced her to. So I did the only thing I felt I could do. I blocked her on every platform, changed my phone number, and moved to a different apartment across town. I ghosted her completely. I felt guilty about it for months. I wondered if I had been too harsh, if I should have tried harder to help her understand. But as time passed and I rebuilt my life, I started to see the situation more clearly. I had been in a controlling, manipulative relationship, and getting out had been an act of self-preservation, not cruelty. I threw myself into work, got a promotion, started rock climbing, and made new friends. By the time 2.5 years had passed, Madison was just a distant memory, a lesson learned about recognizing red flags early. And then that Thursday afternoon she called. When I heard her voice, every muscle in my body tensed. She sounded different, softer, almost fragile. She said she knew I probably did not want to hear from her, but she needed to see me just once. She said it was urgent, that it involved something bigger than our past. Against every instinct screaming at me to hang up, I agreed to meet her at a neutral location, a busy coffee shop near Pioneer Courthouse Square. I told myself it would be public safe and I could leave whenever I wanted. 2 days later, I walked into that coffee shop and saw her sitting at a corner table. My breath caught. Madison looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. And then I noticed her stomach. She was very obviously pregnant, probably around 7 months along. My first thought was relief that this had nothing to do with me. We had been broken up for 2.5 years. There was no way this child was mine. She saw me and waved a tentative smile on her face. I sat down across from her, keeping my jacket on, my body language closed off. I asked her what this was about. She thanked me for coming, said she knew it was awkward, but she needed to explain. Then she started telling me her story. After I left, she said she was devastated. She spiraled for a few months, then met someone new at a networking event. His name was Derek. He was older, confident, and worked as the director of a tech startup in Hillsborough. He seemed stable, ambitious, everything she wanted. They moved fast. Within 3 months, they were talking about marriage. Then she got pregnant. At first, Derek seemed excited. But when she hit the second trimester and started talking about real plans, baby names moving in together, he became distant. One day, he just stopped responding to her calls. She went to his office and was told he no longer worked there. She tried to find him online, but he had blocked her everywhere. She was alone, pregnant, and terrified. I listened, my jaw tight, unsure where this was going. Then she dropped the bomb. She looked at me with those big pleading eyes and said she needed my help. She needed me to be there for the baby. I blinked, convinced I had misheard. I asked her to repeat herself. She did slower this time, like she was explaining something simple to a child. She said Derek was gone. She had no family support because her parents had cut her off years ago over unpaid loans, and she could not do this alone. She said I was the most stable, responsible man she had ever known, and she believed I would be a great father figure. I stared at her, speechless. Finally, I found my voice and said the only logical thing. This was not my child. I could not just step in and play dad to someone else's baby. Her face crumpled and tears started streaming down her cheeks. She said I owed her. She said if I had not abandoned her 2.5 years ago, she never would have ended up with Derek. She said I caused this. Her logic was twisted insane, but she said it with such conviction that for a moment I almost felt guilty. Almost. She kept talking, saying she was not asking for much, just some help, some stability for the child. She said I could be involved as much or as little as I wanted, but she needed someone she could count on. I told her I could not do this, that she needed to find Derek and get him to take responsibility. She insisted she had tried everything, that he had vanished. I stood up, said I was sorry for her situation, but I could not be her solution, and walked out. I thought that would be the end of it. It was not. Over the next few days, my phone exploded with messages. Madison sent me photos of ultrasound images, long paragraphs about how the baby deserved a father, and guilt-laden texts about how I was the only person who could help. She said she had talked to friends who agreed that I should step up. She even threatened to come to my office and tell my boss and coworkers about how I had abandoned her when she needed me most. I felt my anxiety spike. I was not sleeping, could not focus at work, and kept looking over my shoulder expecting her to appear. I called Kyle and told him everything. He was furious, said this was textbook manipulation and I needed to set hard boundaries immediately. I also reached out to my older sister Diane, who is a civil attorney in Seattle. She told me not to sign anything, not to make any verbal commitments, and to document every interaction. She said Madison was trying to guilt me into a situation I had no legal or moral obligation to be part of. She also suggested I consider getting a restraining order if the harassment continued, but even with their support I felt conflicted. Part of me, the part that still believed in doing the right thing, wondered if I should help. Not as a father, but maybe financially just enough to ease her burden. Was I being heartless? Was I responsible in some cosmic way because I had left her? I wrestled with these thoughts for days. Then Madison sent a text that snapped me back to reality. She said she would be at my apartment the next evening at 6, that we needed to finalize things, and that she had already consulted a lawyer about co-parenting arrangements. That was when I realized she was not asking for help. She was trying to trap me. I decided I was done running. I had spent 2.5 years rebuilding my life, and I was not going to let Madison pull me back into chaos. I called Diane again and asked for a referral to a private investigator. She connected me with someone who specialized in locating people. I gave him everything I knew about Derek. Madison had mentioned his first name, that he worked in tech, and that he was supposedly from the Hillsborough area. It was not much, but the investigator said he would see what he could find. Meanwhile, I prepared for Madison's visit. I printed out every text message, every email, every voicemail she had sent. I wanted a clear record of her demands and threats. I also made sure I would not be alone. I asked Kyle to be nearby just in case things got ugly. When Madison arrived at 6 in the evening, I did not let her into my apartment. Instead, I met her in the lobby of my building. She looked annoyed but carried a thick folder under her arm. She tried to act casual, like this was just a normal conversation between old friends. She handed me the folder and told me to look through it. Inside was a co-parenting agreement professionally printed with sections outlining financial responsibilities, visitation schedules, and legal obligations. It was insane. She had gone to the trouble of drafting a contract for a child that was not mine. I closed the folder and handed it back to her. I told her I was not signing anything. Her face hardened. She said I was being selfish, that I was condemning an innocent child to a life of struggle. I stayed calm. I told her I had some information she might be interested in. I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo. It was a picture of Derek pulled from a social media profile my investigator had found. I told her Derek was not a tech startup director. He was a mid-level manager at an insurance company in Beaverton, and more importantly, he was married with 2 kids. Madison's face went pale. She tried to deny it, said I must be mistaken, but I could see the truth in her eyes. I kept going. I told her I had Derek's full contact information. I also had screenshots of messages she had sent to a mutual friend months ago, messages where she admitted Derek was the father but complained that he was unreliable. My investigator had been thorough. I said if she continued harassing me, I would send everything to Derek's wife and file for a restraining order. I also made it clear that I understood what she was really doing. She had not come to me because she thought I would be a good father. She came because she thought I would be easy to manipulate. She was not looking for a partner. She was looking for a paycheck. Madison's composure cracked. She started crying, but this time I did not feel sympathy. I felt resolve. I told her I understood her situation was difficult, but it was not my responsibility. I said she had options. She could pursue child support from Derek through the courts. She could reach out to social services for assistance. There were organizations that helped single mothers. But I was not one of those options. I handed her an envelope. Inside was Derek's contact information, a list of resources for single parents in the Portland area, and a letter from my attorney warning her that any further contact would be considered harassment. Madison took the envelope with shaking hands. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time, like she had not expected me to fight back. She opened her mouth to say something, then closed it. Finally, she turned and walked out of the building. I watched her leave, my heart pounding, but I felt something I had not felt in weeks. I felt free. Over the next week, I heard nothing from Madison. No calls, no texts, no surprise visits. I checked in with a mutual acquaintance, someone who was still loosely connected to Madison through social media, and carefully asked if she had heard anything. Apparently, Madison had reached out to Derek and his wife had found out about the affair. They were in the process of getting a divorce. Madison had also hired a lawyer to pursue child support. It sounded like she was finally taking responsibility for her situation and going after the actual father. As for Derek, I felt a little bad for his wife, but I also knew it was not my circus, not my monkeys. I had done what I needed to do to protect myself, and the rest was up to them to sort out. I blocked Madison's number one final time just to be safe and moved on with my life. In the weeks that followed, I spent a lot of time reflecting on everything that had happened. For a long time, even after I initially ghosted Madison, I carried guilt. I thought maybe I had been too harsh, too cowardly. But this whole ordeal made me realize something important. Walking away from a toxic situation is not cruelty. It is self-preservation. Madison had been manipulative and controlling during our relationship, and when she came back into my life, she tried the same tactics. The only difference this time was that I saw it clearly and refused to be pulled in. I also realized that kindness and responsibility do not mean letting people take advantage of you. I am a compassionate person. I believe in helping others, but there is a line between supporting someone and letting them exploit your good nature. Madison crossed that line. She tried to guilt me into taking responsibility for a child that was not mine, using my past feelings for her as leverage. That was not asking for help. That was manipulation. I talked a lot with Diane and Kyle during this time. Kyle told me he was proud of how I handled it, that I had set boundaries and stuck to them. Diane reminded me that the legal system exists for situations like this, and Madison had plenty of avenues to get support without involving me. Their validation helped me let go of any lingering guilt. My life started to settle back into normalcy. Work picked up and I was offered a lead role on a major project designing a new community library in North Portland. It was the kind of opportunity I had been working toward for years, and I threw myself into it. I also started volunteering with a local organization that supports survivors of domestic abuse. My experience with Madison, while not physically abusive, had been emotionally controlling, and I wanted to use what I learned to help others recognize those patterns. I spent more time with family, visited Diane in Seattle a few times, and reconnected with old friends I had drifted away from during the Madison years. I took up painting as a hobby, something I had always wanted to try but never made time for. Life felt full again, not because I was running from anything, but because I was actively choosing what to fill it with. I do not know what happened to Madison after that final confrontation. I do not know if she had the baby, if Derek stepped up, or if she found another path forward. Part of me hopes she got the support she needed, but I also know that it is not my story to follow anymore. She made her choices and I made mine. I chose to protect my peace, my boundaries, and my future. Looking back, I learned that not everyone who re-enters your life deserves a place in it. Just because someone from your past reaches out does not mean you owe them anything, especially if they hurt you before. I also learned that guilt is a powerful tool in the hands of manipulative people, and recognizing that is half the battle. You can feel empathy for someone's situation without taking responsibility for it. Those two things are not the same. I used to think ghosting Madison was the worst thing I ever did. Now I see it as one of the smartest decisions I made, and standing up to her when she came back, that was even smarter. I do not regret protecting myself. I do not regret saying no. And I do not regret moving forward without looking back. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to walk away, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to stand firm when someone tries to pull you back into their chaos. Boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out. They are guidelines that protect what matters most: your mental health, your integrity, and your right to live a life free from manipulation. If you have ever felt guilty for setting boundaries, remember this. Your peace of mind is not up for negotiation. Protecting yourself is not selfish. It is survival. And you do not owe anyone access to your life just because they demand it. So, what do you think? Have you ever had to cut someone out of your life for your own well-being? Or maybe you have been in a situation where someone tried to guilt you into something you knew was wrong. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I would love to hear your stories. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories, and share this with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening, and remember your boundaries matter. Take care of yourself, and I will see you in the next one.